as you know, we had your mum on, so we've had your mum on having a chat as well.
Yeah.
So I've been excited. I've been looking forward to getting you on because I don't know, man. I think you're, for me, a complete and utter badass. Like you're so inspirational. How old are you now?
17.
You're 17. Okay. How when did you turn 17?
In April, so I'm about 5 months away from being 18.
Wow.
I'm
Okay.
17 now.
Okay. Did you think you'd make your 17th birthday?
No, not 2 years ago. I probably didn't think I would live until I was 16. Really?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Okay. I had the same kind of mindset. I didn't think I was gonna make 18. Made it to 18. I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure about 21." Made it to 21. Managed to make it to 25. So yeah, inspiration. So I really wanna get into, your story because you know, your mum's perspective, very, very different because she's a parent,
Yeah.
um, and you're coming from a 15-year-old. So I think what we should do is, um, I don't know, do you wanna sort of where you at now? Tell me, what's your life look like now?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, my life now is, amazing, you know? I mean, compared to what it was anyway, I'm living in Spain now, which is great. And, the best thing that I've got now is just, like peace of mind, right? Like, I'm embedded in my recovery. But like even just like this morning, I was speaking to my mom. Like I just like I went out and had a coffee and I just saw her, and she was like, it's really nice that like now when I see you every day in the morning, you're always in a good mood. Whereas before, she never knew what she was gonna get when I woke up in the morning, right? She almost like wanted to like hide from me because
Yeah.
either I was gonna be like I was gonna be okay, or I was gonna be like really fucking not okay. You know? But
Do you know she called you she called you Hulk?
yeah,
Yeah, she called you Hulk. Have you ever heard your mum use that or say that to you?
yeah, probably. But I see what she means, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay, so life is very different. We can get into that a bit more because I want to explore, obviously, how amazing your life is now. But I think
mhm,
if you would be so kind, let's rewind. Let's go back, right?
sure.
So the first time that I encountered you was, of course, when I came to visit the house, right? And I had a good, clear idea of what was going on for you because of my own experience, knowing, this is why I do what I do, right? And I knew, um, I think you probably know this as well now. Now you're on in the solution yourself. We understand because we've been there, right? We know.
Yeah,
So coming into your house, I kind of knew what to expect. Obviously, stories are different, different circumstances, but I knew what to expect. And I go into your house. I think on the first visit, it took a while for you to actually come out of your room because at that point you'd taken yourself hostage in your room, as I put
yeah.
it. So, can you please just, if it's okay with you, just go back to that time and explain where's your head at that point?
Well, when I first heard about you coming out of the house, I was extremely suspicious, right? But I was very, very paranoid at the time.
Why?
Because
Why was you paranoid? Why?
well, at that point in my life, I was sort of hitting close to my rock bottom, right? I was at a point where I was drinking like maybe a liter of vodka a day. and if not that, then a whole host of different substances, whatever. And
15, you're 15 years old and you're drinking a liter of vodka a day.
yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Or yeah, so I was in a dark place, right?
Mhm.
It's sort of at this point in my life, I'd sort of like given up by the time that you came in. There was there was a point in time where, I didn't enjoy the drinking anymore. I didn't enjoy the taking drugs. I didn't enjoy any of it. I wanted to stop. And I tried for a while, but I realized that I just couldn't. And then after a certain point I just gave up, right? And I I didn't want to live anymore. But I couldn't find it in me to actually kill myself. So I just resigned myself to the fact that I was just going to keep drinking and keep using drugs until my body gave out on me. And
Okay.
that's sort of the point that I was at when, by the time that you came along, and you know, I sort of given up hope, right? And I sort of feel like um I was so consumed by myself at that point, so like sort of trapped in this in my head in this like self pity and this like just despair like, everything that I was feeling that I sort of had this mentality that like everyone was out to get me, right? I didn't trust anyone. I sort of feel
Yeah.
like anyone that comes into my life, they've got some sort of angle. I
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, um so yeah, so I was trying to find out what your angle is really. You think?
Alright. So just to quickly interject, right? So
Yeah,
I just want to pause on the suicide thing, right? Because I used to romanticize, I use that word. It was like my get out of jail strategy, like you just said. Like,
yeah,
I don't really like my reality, don't really like myself, maybe, don't like my life. I am a victim for me, blah, 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 right? That's what you just sort of described, yeah?
yeah.
And I really relate to that. Um, and so I didn't have the kahunas to, go all the way and perhaps take my own life, right? Which I used to romanticize over and obsess about. It was almost like I could go somewhere into that fantasy, right? But I resigned to the fact, like you, that I didn't have, what it took to do it for whatever reason. So I'll just do it in a slow, painful way of just battering myself with anything I can. And in your case, you know, I s-
I mean, this is why, like, for me, I cut myself as well. I did that for a long time.
mm,
Even after I got sober, when I quit the drugs and the alcohol,
mhm,
I didn't immediately stop self-harming as well. That took a bit longer. But like for me, that was sort of, like you say, I didn't quite have the I don't know, there was still some reservation about going all the way. But I would sort of sit there, drink or whatever and cut myself and sort of, like you say, fantasize about being able to, just die and escape from this world, but then
yeah.
not actually doing it. But I would substitute that with just like self-harming and or of substances.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So your treatment, your mum mentioned this, you was there for 6 months, so you
Yeah.
worked through getting sober and you worked through everything, like including self-harm. So look, let's just part that out in a minute, right? And we can come back to treatment and what you did with that. Okay, so you're in your bedroom, I'm coming into the house, you're suspicious, you're paranoid, you don't trust anyone. Was the trust do you feel your trust, have you always struggled with trust? Do you feel like you had, like, a thing around trust?
Yeah, 100%. I find it very I always felt, that I suppose I've always just found it difficult to fit in with people, right? Ever since I was a little kid. And then, I mean, that's part of the reason why I got into drinking and drugs in the first place. So I can talk more about that later. But,
Mhm.
I think obviously the more that I went down the path of, addiction and alcoholism and everything I was doing,
mm,
I sort of put myself in situations to be betrayed by people, right? I sort of felt like, like my dad walked out on me. He walked out on the family, and
mm,
that was probably the first big, like abandonment in my life. And then after that, I sort of the people I was hanging around with, right, just like I'd always just like, scum on the streets, and I was hanging around with scum on the streets because that's where I felt home. But like, those people weren't my friends. We were all just using each other, right? So
mm,
in that space, you can't trust anyone because I didn't, I wasn't a friend to my friends, and they weren't friends to me. We always had an angle, right? I only wanted to be somewhere if there was drugs and alcohol. And people only wanted to meet up with me if they could get something from me, if they could get money or get, something, right?
okay.
Um,
So no, go on, continue, go on.
no, I'm just saying from there. So from that standpoint, whole world, right? Not understanding that that is not how the whole world operates. That's just how me and my junkie friends operated, right? So, but I went into that. That's how I viewed the world, right? That there's always an angle, you know.
Yeah, okay. That makes perfect sense. I really relate, by the way. So look, um, is it fair to say, Alex, that, correct me if I'm wrong, you at this point, um, are feeling extremely vulnerable, right?
Mm.
And but we put on this kinda like because we feel so vulnerable, we put on this sort of, like, false sense of protection, like this alter ego, like I'm the fucking bad man, like and out on the street, yeah? Is that what
Yeah.
that kind of what it was like for you?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's for me. I've always been an extremely angry person. I've been a very violent person. But now that I understand myself a lot better, I know that I'm not actually an angry person. I'm not a violent person. I actually really hate confrontation. It really stresses me out. But I put that as a match for me. I've learned over the years, but it's very difficult for me to be sad. I don't allow myself to feel sad. For me, I go, as soon as I feel uncomfortable, I feel sad, I feel hurt. I go straight and I channel that all into anger, right?
Yeah.
Because like you say, it's like a defense mechanism. Because if I'm this big, like fucking crazy, scary guy, then people aren't gonna want to hurt me. People are gonna like stay away from me. If I can scare people off, that it's that
Mm.
mentality, right?
Yeah, and you are I mean, you are quite a force of nature. You're not small. Especially
Sure.
and your mum mentioned, this is where from your mum's perspective, she was terrified, man, but you know that, okay? So, um, alright, okay, so look, you're in the house, you're smashing stuff up. Your mum you never let me come into your bedroom. I never dared to go into your bedroom. I was saying to your mum, it's a bit like, I have to be invited into your bedroom. It's like being a vampire. Um, so I used to come to your house and I'd have check-ins with your mum because I knew what was required. I already knew that we've got to do something, right? We
Mm,
have to do something because um, if we leave the situation as is, it's just going to escalate and progressively get worse and worse and worse.
yeah,
And your mum shared her experience of what happened with um it was kind of like some crucial incidents that happened. There was a hospitalization. I think you had ambulances called out. There was all of that going on. It's pretty chaotic and very like stressful. Like you said, it's stressful for you to, it's traumatic. It's very traumatizing, right?
yeah.
So obviously, I get a phone call. I come into that situation. Um, Now, at this point, is it fair to say you're in complete denial? Because you did say that you was aware that it was getting bad. Like you knew it was bad, right?
Yeah, well, I knew it was bad. My life was a bloody mess, right? But I sort of probably still clung onto some kind of idea that, if I was sober for a little while, if I could have a little tolerance break, then I could come back and just like stay in like a decent, area. I only drink a little bit, right? I only do a little bit of this here and there, right? I sort of probably still clung on to that. I didn't want to, but also I didn't understand, right? I didn't yet understand actually what addiction was, what alcoholism was. I only learned all that later, right? Through, programs and
Yeah,
whatever, So,
yeah, yeah. So I remember we started talking when you did come out your room and you started to, investigate what I was representing. And of course, you're suspicious. I think I know that you thought I was there for your mum, not for you. I think you thought I was sort of your mum's next boyfriend or partner, and she was introducing me as so to you. I think was what your head what your head was telling.
but that's exactly what I thought, to be honest.
Oh dear.
I was in my head. I was thinking that this was like, this is like how the mom's gonna introduce you to me, and then she's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, by the way, we're getting married," right? Because that's kind of what my dad did. Not that long before, when he just sort of took us to the pub one day, and then he introduced us to this like woman, and she was like, "Oh, by the way, we're getting married." And I was like, "Right," So I sort of thought that's where this was headed.
Okay. All right. Well, it's very different ending. So okay, so we start to engage, right? And we're having chats. And I remember it was always in the kitchen. You used to come out of your room and stand just outside your room a little bit and just hover. And then as the visits continued, I sensed that you started to, it's a bit like a cat. I always see it as like a cat, right? You can't really, if the more you go to the cat, the more the cat sort of puts its nose up. You've got to allow the cat to come to you, right? Sorry to use that as a as an analogy, but that was what it was like with you, right? So you started to sort of come towards me a bit more, and I could tell that you was more open because the more you was listening and engaging and hearing my story, because I that's what I was leading this with was, to
Yeah.
break through and get through to you. I knew that I have to get on a level, and I'm sharing my experience. And you now know, now you're in the solution that you do that for other people now, right? You share your
Yeah.
so it's a powerful antidote, to speak our truth and get real and share our experience with others, right? So is it fair to say when I was doing that, you started to connect to that truth, right? Your truth.
Yeah, well, you were really the first person who like got through to me in a sense to where like, I realized quite quickly, I think, that I couldn't bullshit you. Like there was that you actually knew what you were talking about, right? Because I've been in therapy my entire life, right? I've had different people put me to like anger management assigned from school, or I had like counselors assigned from the police or whatever for, whatever reasons, but I could always walk circles around them because they didn't really understand, right? I could just like they yeah, they just didn't get it. They were just sort of there for a paycheck and then they left, right? And they weren't really that involved in a sense. And even if they did care, the point being that they didn't understood. But with you, I could tell quite quickly that you understood, at least in some part, what I was going through. And yeah, and there was sort of like a little voice in my head, like I said, like in that article that I sent you, which sort of said that, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. Maybe I should listen to him, right? And
Oh,
I
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and yeah, and I did, luckily it sort of went from there. To be honest, my recollection of the last few years and my, is probably a lot different to yours and my mum's, because also my memory is quite fuzzy, right? Like I remember like events, but I don't necessarily remember the order of events, and like, a lot of details. It's all a bit blurry for me, to be honest. It makes sense, but yeah, my,
Well,
it's not as sharp as yours.
yeah, I think time grants us clarity. I believe, in time, I feel like the haze might clear and you might start to pick
Yeah.
up some things or not. It doesn't matter. Okay, so look, your your room, you painted it black,
Mm.
and
Yes.
you did a bit of, scratch art on the wall, didn't you? Your mum told me.
Yeah, yeah, I would just yeah, I
Overnight?
probably like
Right.
yeah, I think I took a knife and I just drew, like, hangmen and stuff on the walls and
So
just stuff
so
like
what
those, yeah.
so what is going through your head? What is going through your head, Alex? Do
Well,
you
at the time when I meet you.
Yeah, I mean, what what is going through your head? Do you connect to that now, or is it just something you don't need to connect to, and it's just, it's just something that it's a story that once played out? I'm just interested to know.
No, I remember I do remember what was going through my head at the time. I was just like I was consumed by sort of like these different voices in my head, right? And I couldn't escape that.
Mm,
It's like yeah, I was just so like I felt extremely sorry for myself and I was just sucked. I was very angry. I was just full of like all this like resentment and and just yeah, I was just sort of like obsessed with all this negativity, right? That I couldn't cope with being sober at any point. I just wanted to drink myself to oblivion like all the time. Right?
yeah,
That's all that I could really think about. You know, it's just sort of like escaping. I was just in a lot of
escapism.
pain, really.
Yeah, escapism. I see it as, yeah, escapism. It's avoidance. For me, it's I can't sit in my reality because my reality is too painful. So I need to remove myself in any way I can. And I learned from a very young age to do it in many different ways, like you. I used things that were to my detriment, and to other
Yeah.
people's. Okay, all right. So look, let's get into the beginning of the end, if we want to call it that. So it's
Mhm.
like I'm at the house. You started to engage, and there was an incident, and we don't really need to get into it too much. Your mum went through it because I don't think you was present. I don't know if you can answer that when this played out with the hospital and the OD and your psychosis and all that, right?
Well, yeah, and I know I remember sort of it. I know what happened obviously because people told me what happened, but yeah, I mean, I can talk about it if you want. Like you said, you've already sort of gone
Well,
through that.
I mean, if you feel it's of value to anyone to understand what's going on for someone who's in that place, but if you don't want to get into it, you don't have to, man.
Well, I mean, like, no, 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 I'm happy to get into anything. So I went, I think I disappeared for about 2 or 3 days. I went off. I've been planning like a party for a little while, which ended up just being like a big group of people, sort of getting smashed in a field somewhere. We like so happened. Yeah, that kind of yeah. And that it sort of got progressively worse as it went on. There was less and less people, um, and yeah, I actually lost my virginity on that party as well, like in a bush somewhere in the field. But that's a whole nother story.
I, I don't actually know what to say to that, Alice. Um, Congratulations, maybe. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, well, I thought I should add that. But yeah, no, so I remember sort of towards the end, right? This was on like day 3 or something. It was early in the morning. The sun was just coming up and I was sitting with 2 or 3 people. Um, we'd run out of drugs, we'd run out of alcohol, but we were still sitting there and I still wanted to carry the party on. So I was like, right, you guys wait here. I went on my bike to Sainsbury's, nicked 2 or 3 liters of rum, bike back. And then the last thing I remember was sitting with them, drinking the rum out of the bottle. And then next thing I know, I wake up in hospital. And then, I come to remember, like, I've been told sort of the rest of what happened, right? Where, I ended up somehow, someone brought me to my mum's driveway where I OD'd, in front of my mum and my sister. And then, and then, yeah, I was sort of brought to hospital, right? And yeah, although the psychosis was a different event, though, that was a different day, I'm pretty sure. Uh,
Okay. All right, well, look, thanks for sharing that. Are you okay recalling that? Yeah?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I talk about these things all the time, to be honest, these days, so it's fine.
Cool. Okay, right. So you went on a rampage, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
um, it ends up, um, you're in hospital. I think your mum said you actually stopped breathing or you lost consciousness completely. I think you actually lapsed in your life. You live.
Yeah, I did. I think it was for actually a couple of minutes. I actually died there. I wasn't breathing at all. My mum had to do CPR, and then until the ambulance got there, and then paramedics did CPR. And then I think from what I was told, I sort of just like threw up, and then I sort of came back. Yeah,
Oh dear, oh
which
no.
is kind of like you see in the movies, right?
Yeah,
Like,
God almighty. So your mum had to obviously navigate that one. And your sister, was she actually, I mean, you've got a beautiful relationship with your sister now, right? I mean,
no,
no, no?
actually not. No, she
I
she
thought
actually
you,
she hasn't really.
go on.
No, it's actually, that's one still gonna take some working. She hasn't really spoken much to me in the last 2 years, to be honest. She's still very angry, I have to say.
Oh, bloody hell. I'm
Um,
really sorry to hear that. I thought maybe I assumed that because you are now in the solution and in recovery and, present in your life and the best version of yourself, which is a
mm,
really beautiful person. But that just goes to show that it takes time. These wounds take time to heal, right? Um,
yeah.
okay, maybe we can talk about that a bit later on. All right, don't want to focus too much on that. But your sister's got has she got support? Your sister? Do you know if she's getting support with what she had to go through?
Yeah, I mean, my mum's sort of trying, like, she's got a really good relationship with my mum, but, obviously, everything impacted her quite a lot because you've got to remember when everything first of all, she grew up with, an alcoholic, drug addict dad. Then he left, and then she had me, going completely mental for when she was really young, like 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, right? She had to, she's seen me dragged away by police. She's seen me die and be brought back. She's seen me cut myself. She's seen all sorts of like things. Her childhood got put on pause, right? Uh, she had to grow up quite fast with a lot of the things that sort of she went through, and she's still only 14 now, so I'm sort of giving that one time, because
Yeah,
like I'm obviously in the process of making all my amends and everything. I made amends to my mum. I like to think I'm making a living amends as well. But with my sister, I think it would be selfish of me to rush in there and be like,
yeah,
yeah, I want to
cool.
make this amends to you. When she right now, she doesn't even want to look at me. But I I
Yeah,
I I completely understand that, because,
yeah.
obviously it's not just me that it affected everyone in my life, right? So,
Mm. Well, look, you're still an inspiration, bro, to actually, just own it and to get real and to get help, and you'll live in it, and that's all you can do. And it is a wound that requires a lot of time and patience to heal. So you got the right attitude there, and that's all you can do. Okay, all right. Well, look. So me and your mum started to have conversations about how we can help you, right? What are we going to
yeah.
do? Because you at this time was in the UK, right?
Yeah,
And
we're in Somerset.
yeah, and your mum, I already knew this by talking to your mum, and your mum, um, clarified this that the resources were thin on the ground, right? You're 15
Mhm.
and you're not really getting a lot of support, right? Is that correct?
No. Yeah, no, in fact, I was pretty much getting nice support from if you're talking about from the government, right? From, like, institutions, there was nothing there, right?
Okay.
Um,
So there's a lot of people that need, you're not alone, basically. This is a very shockingly so common scenario. You are not alone. Your family are not, an isolated incident. This is quite a common from where I'm sitting anyway, because I have to deal with a lot of such matters. So we had to think outside the box, right? Do you remember being part of these conversations?
um I do, but I don't remember a lot of the conversations in detail. I remember thinking that you talked a lot and you wouldn't shut up, if I'm being honest. I I remember
But
the thing
go on, tell me. What do you mean?
no, I just remember thinking that, like, he's one of those people when you get him started talking, he doesn't stop, right? You know? Um,
No, no off button.
it's nah, but, like I say, I remember the standing in the kitchen with you there and having these conversations, but the actual details of what we was talking about is still, like, I can't recount.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Well, look. So we plotted to get you support, right?
Mhm.
And do you remember the day? Do you remember anything? Because we've packed a bag, we've put you in a car, and we're
what?
off to the and we're
That I left?
yeah, we're off to the airport. So where are you at then? Do you remember any of that?
I do remember. I remember I was high as a kite, because after, one day you called me up, right, and you somehow got me to agree to just go to rehab. I was like, "Okay." So I got ready, and then my mum sort of wanted to come up with some idea to keep me in the house and not disappearing until the time that we were gonna leave, right? And avoid getting me really drunk because, that would cause all sorts of issues and might fuck the whole plan up. So she was like, "Right, we can go to your dealer, get as much weed as you want, just, as long as you stay around the house for the next couple of days." So I was like, "Right." So we went and did that, and I made a bunch of wheat brownies as well.
I
We
know,
ate.
cause
Yeah.
yeah, I remember I remember coming to the house on the morning of having to take you, right? And you're compliant to this. It's not like we just kidnapped you and bundled you in a car. You knew what was happening, right?
No. Yeah, I knew it was happening.
Yeah. So I turn up at the house, you're off your nut on space cakes, right?
Yeah.
And you was quite reluctant to sort of bin them. You wanted to take them with you, right? So there was a big batch of brownies, right? Do you remember the airport?
I remember, oh, yeah, I mean, it was a lot. I put about 10 grams of weed in these things, right? And I basically ate them all, like, in one go before we left because I didn't wanna waste them, like you said.
Well,
So
no, you was eating them in the car on the journey to the airport.
yeah, I remember I was sort of okay. I was high, but I was alright. And then I remember we got just like as we were walking up to security, I was walking with you, and suddenly I just felt like, my whole body just went like loose. I felt I was gonna fall over. I was like, "Oh fuck, I'm not gonna make it through security." That After that, it's a bit fuzzy, right? I think I was still a bit high when I got to rehab, like however many hours later, you know.
Well,
So
it's a long flight, mate. I mean, you was comatose the whole flight, from what I remember. You had your hood up, sunglasses on, and headphones on, and that was it. You was lights out for the whole freaking
I didn't
journey.
talk to you.
No,
No.
that was it. So I remember, I totally remember we went through, did the usual, get to an airport, go through security, and we had however long to wait for our flight. And I remember we sat in one of the restaurants to get some food, to have a munch, and you're sitting opposite me. And I remember when your whole body, your whole demeanor just went wallop. And it all hit you. It all hit you. The whole lot just went wallop. And I thought, oh no, man. Oh no, how are we going to get you on the plane? Anyway, fast forward. Let's fast forward, right?
Yeah.
So you get to this faraway land. Where was it you went? Do you want to say? Or
Yeah, Johannesburg, South Africa.
right, Joburg, right? So we end up there in a strange land. Have you ever been to South Africa before?
No, never, no.
Okay. So are you aware of any, are you anticipating? I mean, the unknown, fear of the unknown is scary, right?
Yeah. To be honest, I think maybe the weed helped, but I don't really remember being that worried. I was just sort of like, at that point, I'd sort of given up caring really about anything. So I was just at a point where I was sorry, like, I'd sort of given up, but I was just like, fuck it, I might as well go. Like, it's probably not going to do anything, but I might as well go and see what it's like. I video called, I think once with the owners, and they seemed, decent enough. And I was fine, I just remember I met them. They met me at the airport. We were driving. And I was just like, let's see what happens. It's, I wasn't really that. I honestly, I was at the first, like for the first day or whatever. I really wasn't that worried, to be honest. Um,
And then you sobered up.
Yeah, yeah, and then I sobered up, and then I realized because obviously I went there consensually, but I had this moment where it hit me, like, now that I'm actually here in this, like, compound, they're not gonna let me leave until they want me to leave, right? So then I sort of feel like, "But fuck, I'm a prisoner now." So, then the realization hit me, and then that sort of, yeah, I was fighting it for a long time. I was doing everything I possibly could to try and get them to kick me out or to get, to get them, my mum to come and take me home. I was guilt tripping her on the phone, saying all these horrible things. And
She mentioned that, yeah, she talked through that when we spoke, she was every atom in her body, like, she had to fight the resistance, she had to resist the urge to come and get you, you know?
yeah,
Right. So, look, it's quite a scary place, man. I mean, the barbed wire, I mean, the barbed wire is to keep people out, not to keep you in. You know what I mean? Um
that actually,
No, I mean, like, it's a city, it's a scary city, man. I mean, it is.
yeah,
So anyway, we know, Alex, if you want to share this, that it was tell us the experience. Because I was gonna say, it's like it's a love-hate thing for me, facing your demons. Because deep down, I know I need to do it, but I'm freaking scared.
yeah. Um, well, I think for me, sort of looking back, um, I can see that I really needed that. I needed like a detox and some sort of treatment, right? Because I wasn't the kind of person who was gonna get sober on 12-step programs alone. I think I would have died long before that happened, right? I was sort of in a path where I was at like a crossroads where I very quickly was either gonna get locked up in a treatment center like I did, or I was gonna end up dead or in jail, right? That was sort of my two options, and they were gonna happen real soon, And then I got there, and yeah, like you say, I realized like, right, there's no going back now. I'm here, and I sort of gotta do what they say, as it were. And also, I'm 15 at the time, right? And this is not a like juvenile facility. This is an adult facility, right? So, I'm here with like 30, 40, 50 year olds, people who've like coming out of jail off the streets and stuff, like real hard people. And I'm just sort of thrown in there. And so that was also quite the experience. I'm in a country that I've never been to before with people like twice, 3 times my own age. Um, and yeah, it was a shock, right? And then obviously I'm sort of like hit with this like, um, it took me about 3 months where I sort of realized, the longer I fight this, the longer I'm gonna be here for. And actually, I sort of had this sort of moment where I thought, maybe actually being sober isn't so bad. Maybe I should give this a go. And I started like, wanting to do it for myself. Um, and from that point I grew quite quickly, I sort of once I started actually putting effort into it and wanting to do it for myself, then it got better quite quickly. Um, but yeah, I mean that shock lasted for quite a while, I mean, you imagine I'm in a big dorm room, right? Like military style barracks with like bunk beds with maybe 20 other guys, all adults. And, like there's no locks on anything. There's no locks on the bathroom, right? Because someone might lock themselves in there and off themselves. So, So, like, the people, like, walking in on you, you're walking in on people in the bathroom, and there's, like, all the people are coming in here and, like, psychologists. I mean, I was probably in some sort of psychologist, to be honest, but, like, it was a shock, right? But you get used to it quite quickly, I think as addicts, we adapt, and I got on with a lot of people in there, really.
Yeah. And this your description of this isn't the, I wanna use the word industry standard, but, I was saying to your mum, um, there's no right or like, there's loads of different places and things to explore for people. There is no right or wrong, it's just what happened in your circumstance.
Yeah, well, I think for me, like, what's important for me is, like, rehab doesn't keep me sober, right? I needed that at the time because I was in a real place where I needed to get myself out of that environment quickly because I couldn't I however much the consequences got worse, however much I wanted to stop, I couldn't stay sober for more than a day, and the consequences were getting quite bad. So I needed that forceful removement from everything. But after that point, um, the rehab was just sort of for me to clear everything out my head and get me to that point of sort of realizing more I'm powerless, that surrender, right? But then after that, in order for me to grow and not just be able to be sober, but enabled to like live and enjoy life sober and actually be happy, which for me at the time is like a foreign concept, right? Happiness, like I didn't even know what that was. But in order for me to like learn how to do that, how to actually live life sober, then there was a whole lot more work, even outside of the rehab, like working in a
Mm.
program, right? Program of recovery
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
was necessary.
So I always what you just described, I always latch onto it as emotional sobriety, right? So because like getting sober, you can wear it on your sleeves of like this victory of like, look at me, I'm sober, how amazing, right? Because it's really freaking hard to do, right? That's why not a lot of people do it. It is really fucking hard to be sober in society when society is mapped out where it's you only have to look around. I mean, it's really hard to be someone, a minority, in my opinion, who's doing things a different way, right? And being sober. So,
Yeah.
you can walk around with that, like, look at me, I'm sober. But if you're not emotionally, you know, sober, then it's just, you know, no big thing, in my opinion. It's really important to have that real foundation of emotional sobriety, right? Which is what I think you was just sort of talking about.
Yeah, well, it's about getting from a point where I'm just sort of living, I'm just getting by, I'm just surviving, getting to that point where like going from that to actually being able to enjoy life, and
Mm,
have some sort of meaning. And, because even like the problem wasn't the drugs and the alcohol for me. The drugs and the alcohol was the solution to my problem.
mhm,
The drugs and alcohol was the solution to, to quiet all the bad things in my head, to get rid of all this negative emotion and, allow me to be comfortable and fit in and,
mm,
like feel a part of life. And eventually that stopped working. And eventually that got to a point where I was miserable drunk and I was miserable sober, or high,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so like I had to get that what I used to get from alcohol. I had to get that from something else, and for me today, like I call that God, I didn't always call that God. Um, y- uh,
So sorry, go on, continue.
no, no, no
Okay,
question.
so I wanna pause on that, right? Because the God, God word, right? Which I'm just gonna put it out there. There's a lot of stigma attached to it, and a lot of people, including myself, get caught up on that. Like, whoa, the God word. Like, you know what I mean? Now, you're 17, right?
Yeah.
As a 15-year-old going into a treatment center, the God thing, right? Which for anyone that doesn't know, part of treatment and 12 step and all of these sort of programs of recovery, if you want to call it, it's encouraging to invite that concept into the mix, right? That's what happens.
Yeah.
So explain that when you because I'm gonna guess, correct me if I'm wrong, that you wasn't subscribed to what we're talking about pre-treatment in your old life.
No, I wasn't at all. I mean, my idea of a spiritual experience was, a really high dose of acid and mushrooms, right? That was my idea of God at the time, right? That's so, that
And why not?
was
Why not though?
what I thought God was. Yeah, well, right at the time, yeah,
Yeah,
but
why not?
for me, why it's so important in my life today, it's everything in my life today because I I had to realize, and I did realize that I'm completely powerless over my addiction, right? I have no power to stay sober on my own accord. I can't do it. And from that point, I need some power in order to help me get sober and to remove this obsession from me, And so this is why, in a 12-step program, you need to believe in a higher power, but it doesn't need you need to believe in Jesus, right? For me, when I came in for a long time, I didn't call it God. For me, like I had a higher hour, which was the rooms of AA, right?
Like other people, like other people.
Yeah. But just something like a power greater than me that can get me sober, right? But after um like I wasn't necessarily prejudiced against God like a lot of people are when I came into the rooms. Um But I was willing to believe, but I didn't really understand. Like I sort of looked at religious people who had this like faith and it brought them so much comfort and I envied that. Like I wanted to have like what these people had, but I just didn't understand it, right? I just didn't get it. And I don't know quite why it works, but simply by going through a 12-step program, it happened for me.
Mm.
I had what they call spiritual experience to where, I see life in a completely different way today. I have this complete sense of like ease and comfort to where even when things are going wrong in my life, I still have a sense that everything's okay. And even when things are going wrong in my life, I don't want to drink. That obsession is gone.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a faith to me. A faith is my understanding of a faith is just whether it's religious or not is just having this sense of comfort that you're held in life, that you're okay, that you're going to be okay no matter what life throws at you, and that's a
Yeah.
really beautiful thing. So, who are we to judge? Anyone's experience with that, because it's a very personal thing. And like you, I used to be very, very suspicious of, and I just didn't. I was yet to comprehend what you just described until I went through my own experience. And I consider myself to be very, very spiritual and connected to something, but I I still to this day get caught up on the stigma attached to the conventional terms, especially the word God. I still struggle with it. So to be honest, but my understanding is far greater than any human words. I don't think human words can pin it down what we're trying to describe anyway. Just kind of gets in the way a little bit. Anyway, thank you for sharing that because I know it's a really personal thing to do that. It's a very sacred, personal, thing that you have there.
Mm.
Well done. Okay, look, so you was there for 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Coming out of
Sorry,
treatment, coming out of treatment.
yeah.
Yeah. After 6 months, what was that like?
It was scary to be honest, because I've been basically in this bubble for 6 months. I've been in this like little, this like little mini ecosystem, like this self-contained thing, which is a rehab, where
Mm.
you're in your own little world in there, and then you get used to that, and so leaving, I wasn't quite sure what to think. And also, I haven't seen my family. I haven't seen my mum or my sister in 6 months, and the last time we saw each other was in like a real bad situation. So I was a bit apprehensive about that. But you went really well. I sort of
Sorry, I was just gonna say, so you had, someone support you when you came out, right?
yeah. So the my friend George came and yeah, flew me back from the rehab, and then he was the original, and he's a recovered addict as well, as you know. And, like, the original plan was he was just supposed to fly me to Spain, and then I was gonna go home, but we had massive problems with my passport and stuff. Turns out we didn't realize my passport was expired. We only realized that when we tried to leave the country. But somehow we managed to get it into the UK, which was at least a bit closer. And then I stayed with George. He very kindly let me live with him for a couple days, which was, great. Got to go around London and stuff. Um, and then, yeah, and then eventually managed to actually get into Spain. Um, and yeah, but the thing is that I've realized looking back is I always make things out to be worse in my head than they actually are in reality. Whenever anything new is going to happen or anything, any like even doing something like this, I always sort of stress about it in my head. But then when I actually get to it, it's never as bad as I think it is. You know,
Mhm.
uh,
Absolutely, absolutely.
I always make things out to be worse in my mind than they really are. So I'm sort of getting better at that now to sort of just like, whatever happens is gonna happen, right? Have that kind of mentality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's kinda like obviously blind faith, but, like, trust, right? You
Yeah.
started out saying you had no trust, right? Rewind back to your former existence, no trust, right? And then fast forward, gone through this journey of self-discovery, recovery, whatever, and now you're starting to cultivate a sense of trust, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean today, I've lost my train of thought there, sorry.
That's okay.
Um,
Just talking about
but
trust.
yeah. Yeah, no, trust, yeah. I mean, today I sort of, you know, I'm not the one in control of my life anymore, right? I'm not running on self-will because I've run on self-will my whole life. I've been in control of everything, and that brought me to the point of near death, right? So I've realized that that doesn't work, and today I let God be in charge of my life, and I continuously hand my will over on a daily basis.
And it works for you,
And
yeah? You
and
feel that works?
for me that works. Um, like I say, I have an immense amount of comfort, that's just brought to me by the faith, that I sort of feel like, um, like I say, whatever happens, I'm gonna be okay and everything is gonna happen as it's supposed to. I truly believe that today. And this is not to say, when I talk about God, I'm not prejudiced against religion, but I'm not like a Christian, right? I'm not going to church, I'm not doing any of these things right now. For me, you know, for me, it's a spiritual thing. Um,
Mm.
you know, um,
Well, like I say, there's no right or wrong, man. If we get caught up in, you gotta do this or you gotta do that, or it should be like this, it's completely subjective. It's your experience, and if it works for you, crack on, man. I
yeah.
mean, you're clearly doing something right.
Well, I heard a really good analogy yesterday, right? That, if you imagine, you're on a donkey, you're on a mule, right? And you're on this thing climbing up a mountain, and there's different people and they've got different donkeys, right? One donkey is Christianity, one is Islam, one is Buddhism, one is spirit of nature or whatever. And we sort of argue, we think, my donkey's the best donkey, right? This one is like this is the way, this is the only one. But at the end of the day, they're all going up the hill to the same place, and it doesn't matter which donkey you get on. If you get on one of them, you're gonna end up going to the top of the hill, right? And that top of the hill for me is a spiritual experience, and it doesn't matter
Mm,
how you get there, but as long as you get there, that's what's
mm.
important for me. That's
Fuck yeah.
so
Fuck yeah, Alex. Well done for, sharing that. I've not heard that before. That's pretty cool.
was hey,
I'm not
funny analogy that.
no, it's good. That was a good one. Alright, so look, I think we're gonna close it off soon, but I just want you to, for anyone that might find this and listen to this, right? Um, coming from a 17-year-old, right,
Mm.
that you are now and the life that you have, just give us a little snapshot of your takeaways and, you know, was it worth it taking that risk and going to a faraway land to face yourself and your demons?
Yeah, 100%, right? It's about taking responsibility, and for me, the biggest thing that I have today is that all the pain and suffering that I've gone through in my life, today that's my biggest asset because I use that as a gift, right? Because now I have the opportunity to help people and give a message of hope to people in the same situation that I was, and people
Mm,
who are suffering in the same way that I was. And like I've been to the depths of life, I've been in the worst situations in addiction or sleeping outside or whatever it is, and there's a way out. And for me, I didn't think it was possible. I got to a point where, like I talked about before, I completely given up hope. I was so consumed with like misery. Like I said, when I forgot what it was felt like to be happy, and today, I wake up most days like looking forward to the day. I experience joy. I laugh on a daily basis. I have and I have the opportunity um, to try and help people and ask nothing in return, which is a really beautiful thing because it's the opposite of what I used to do. The idea of giving my time and resources to someone and not getting anything in return, that sounded like aliens to me before, but for me, that's such an important thing because my whole life I've been so focused on myself and me and my sadness and my misery and all my poor little life, and what I want, and what I'm not getting. And for me now, that I need to be an opposite of that, and that's self-forgetting, right? That's focusing on other people regardless of what I want. If I have to, wake up early and stay out late when I wanna be doing other things to give my time to someone else, and expect nothing in return, that's the most important thing. Um, and I think there's such like a profound sense of like, meaning in that, and purpose that it's really beautiful. Um
wow, yeah. Wow, wow, wow. Well, look, Alex, I just want to thank you for allowing me to, have you go through all of that experience today and share that with anyone that might hear it. It's a really powerful, strong message that I think can help people. So well done, man. Thank you. Thanks for giving your time. It's good to see you. Always good to see you.
Alright. Yeah, good to be on.
All right,
Nice talking to you.
take
Alright,
care.
man. Alright, see ya.
Bye. Bye bye.